Good evening, everyone. This is İskit, and you are watching What's New, What's News. Today, we have a very important topic that we will discuss Turkey's role in the Ukraine crisis. Throughout history, the intricate web of alliance, diplomatic maneuvers, and strategic interests has shaped the trajectory of conflicts and resolutions alike. Today, we embark on a journey of understanding devoid of bias or preconceived nations, seeking clarity amidst the cacophony of voices and narratives. Our esteemed guest, Professor Dr. Zeynep Alemdar from Okan University, will bring a wealth of expertise and insight to this discourse. With her profound understanding of foreign policy dynamics and global affairs, we are poised to explore Turkey's actions and intentions in a manner that is both discerning and impartial. Let me invite Professor Dr. Zeynep. Welcome, Professor Dr. Zeynep. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm great. How about yourself?
And thanks for joining us. Today's discussion is recently there is an important topic that needs to be discussed because this is all global attention in Turkey and the relations in between Russia and Ukraine, and it has been ongoing war more than 1 year now in Ukraine, and we will discuss the recent visit of Zelensky today. So let's dig in, and again, thank you very much for joining me today. How significant is President Zelensky's recent visit to Turkey in the context of ongoing conflict in the Ukraine?
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for having me again. It's actually been more than we actually recently commemorated the second year of the war, so it's been longer than that we are that everybody, each side has expected, and as in all wars which has gone longer, we do not know how the exact calculations of time in terms of what was in the minds of Putin or Zelensky, but we know that in the early days both Russia and Ukraine and the Europeans and the Americans actually had different ideas in terms of how the war is going to unfold. I mean, Russians were thinking that it was going to end much sooner. Ukraine proved to be a formidable counter force. And then, of course, with the great support of the United States and the European Union, that was not actually that much expected. The war now has gone too long. So once a war goes on such a long time, there's of course a fatigue on both sides. So especially, I was, when I was getting ready for this, for example, some of the international media was actually underlining how much, especially the Ukrainians, even the Ukrainians were actually getting tired of this war. Mm-hmm. It's not that they don't want to fight for their country. Of course, it's they are at war. It's an independence war for them. It's live or die war type of thing. But still, there's a fatigue in terms of the social conditions that are surrounding them and of course affecting them. In Russia, of course, we do not know what's particularly happening, and we don't with the recent death of Navalny, the Russian opposition leader, and maybe his funeral can actually show us a couple of the give us some pointers about how Russian people are also there are Russian people who are actually against the war type of thing. But in terms of what it means for Zelensky here, I think one of the things that we should remember is that, the Antalya Diplomacy Forum has just happened. And the Antalya Diplomacy Forum actually opened with the talk of the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov. So it was, given Turkey's role or desire to be a mediator in this conflict, it was apparent that Zelensky should have come. Like if you're going to be the impartial mediator or the negotiator, of course, if you give the floor to the one side, of course, the second side should also come and show that they are present. So I think that I would think that visit was also a kind of a signal for that, and we will see whether Turkey would be actually successful, or can actually overcome the other adversaries who would also like to be mediators in this conflict, let's say.
Yes, it is important actually, and with the recent cancellation of Putin was another problem of that as well, because last minute Turkey was expecting him in our country, but he cancelled again because of his schedule was busy or something. But this is I don't know how we should read. With the sublines of that one as well, because I don't know whether he wants a peace as well or not, because this is kind of a controversial subject to discuss, I think.
Well, some of the Russian experts that I was talking to were already, that visit was actually unexpected in any case. We were never sure that he would definitely come or not. Lavrov has just come, so it's not, it's right before the elections. So it was like, nobody was, 100% sure that Putin was actually going to come to Turkey. Let's remember that, there's, of course, saying something definitive in terms of, what's going on in Putin's mind is, beyond our reach. But let's remember that, there's, the whole world is actually kind of waiting for the American elections as well, this coming November. So because the way that whether Trump is going to come and how he's going to handle this Ukraine-Russia situation is actually going to decide the fate of this conflict. So I think, like, until November or maybe even early into the next year, we would actually still the whole international system would actually stay on hold for a while, up until we see what the American elections would actually bring, because Trump actually talked about whether if he comes, like, he would solve the conflict right away, type of thing. So he made these overwhelming talks, as we expect him to do. So.
Yeah, promises. Yes, all promises for the election campaigns, I would say. Well, speaking about Turkey's role, of course, in the Ukraine crisis seems to be evolving now. Could you elaborate on the potential implications of this shift in Turkey's stance?
Well, since our new foreign minister actually came to his job, since Hakan Fidan took the Minister of Foreign Affairs role, it's actually very clear that there's a new direction of the Turkish foreign policy going towards kind of like the. I wouldn't want to say, if I say all the ways, we would need to describe which all the ways, but it is less confrontational, let's say, and or at least those red lines that we were talking so bigly about are not that are not that much pronounced now, because we have seen, I mean, Turkey has seen that, you know, overwhelming statements about or very emotional statements about foreign policy does not actually help Turkey. Turkey has always, you know, enjoyed this, you know, not only mediating role, but, you know, in diplomacy, I mean, you cannot really talk too loud. Let's put it that way. So there is, you know, there is something, you know, since Hakan Fidan came to the ministry, there is this, you know, stance towards, you know, rekindling the relationships with the neighbors that we fell very badly upon. Especially in 2000, you know, especially between 2017 and 2021-22. So now, so in terms of Ukraine and how we are, how Turkey would like to, you know, contribute to the solution of the crisis, is of course, I mean, something to be seen. But it seems like, I mean, after the Antalya Diplomacy Forum, for example, Fidan said that, you know, it was time for Ukraine and Russia to start at least the ceasefire talks. But also added that this doesn't mean, you know, the recognition of Russia's occupation and all those things. But there is, I think, like, you know, going back to the first point that I was making during your first question, there is this fatigue in all over the world, and I mean, of course, the conflict in Gaza doesn't help. You know, when there are so many conflicts that the world has to deal with, especially, you know, the world has to deal with, you know, we would kind of like to take this, you know, Russia-Ukraine thing off the table when there's another, you know, bigger and more, you know, more overwhelming conflict again in our neighborhood as well. So.
Well, yeah, I think Turkey has a very significant role on such conflict in between Ukraine and Russia, and also Palestine and Israel is another matter when we consider like Erdogan's visit to Cairo after 11 years, and he visited United Arab Emirates as well. So those kind of elements, I think, dynamics are affecting such relations as well. I think this is kind of my point of view, but I think people are thinking in that way, especially when you consider Turkey's position. Well, on March of 8th, President Erdogan's meeting with President Zelensky has garnered attention globally. What do you think were the key points of discussion during their summit? Because this time we have seen a huge kind of attention on the international press as well. I will have another question, even with the Pope Francis made his comments about that. So, but we will come to that one. But how do you see that?
So the points that we're discussing, of course, it was mostly the shipping security in the Black Sea region, the grain deal, whether the grain deal can actually happen again. But we know that Russia is not on the you know, does not want to renew the grain deal. There were actually even talks about, you know, another deal that was going to be stroked in order to be able to at least get some type of you know, grain to the poor African nations mostly. But of course, I mean, when Zelensky visited, the place that he went was the place where the warship for the Ukrainians was actually being built. So it's mostly defense industry cooperation, and you know, what the Turkish foreign policy has been doing for now for the past you know, 15 to 20 years is also like this, you know, entrepreneurial foreign policy view that we have, which which looks into the economic consequences of or the economic interests of the Turkish state, which is always the case in actually international relations. So this defense industry cooperation and the post-conflict reconstruction of Ukraine are the key points that that are being talked about, as far as we can gather from the various news sources that are available to us. So I think that was the what's going to happen in the Black Sea, the grain deal, and the defense industry cooperation were the subjects that were being discussed.
Yeah, I am wondering how will Russia respond for the decisions after the meeting. I mean, it will come up in a couple of days, I think, or there will be another discussion. I don't know. It's Lavrov. I always wondered what Lavrov will make a statement about the current situation. So this is another thing. So yes, and well, there is a kind of potential hosting a peace talks between Ukraine and Russia, and Turkey is well, this is kind of people are imagining that Turkey will be this on this table as well. How do you assess the impact of Turkey potentially hosting these peace talks? Because Erdogan hinted statement after meeting with Zelensky. So how do you see that? How we should read about that?
Well, I mean, we already, I mean, I kind of like touched upon this mediator role that Turkey wants to do. I mean, back in 2006, 2007, again, under this government, remember that we just talked about Palestine and Israel. Turkey was actually kind of also successful in terms of the hostage negotiations, for example, between Hamas and Israel at the time. And then in 2010, for example, Turkey started to take this role, this mediator role, much more seriously, and in international areas as well. And in 2010, if I'm not mistaken, we entered into this alliance with countries like Finland, for example, for mediation for peace. And then we were actually Turkey was actually successful in terms of becoming part of and even an accelerator in becoming part of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe's peace mediation groups. Even in the Organization of Islamic Conference, we were trying to do this mediation thing. So it's this mediation role is actually a role that that Turkish foreign policy has been actually going after for some time now. But for Ukraine and Russia, I mean, given Erdogan and Putin's good relations, although we had that those good relations, the fact that we didn't have great relations with the West, actually, with the US especially, and the European Union for that matter, there were a lot of other adversaries, such as I mean, ranging from South Africa, Brazil, Egypt, G7 countries, Canada, France, Germany, who actually were always calling for ceasefire in Ukraine and Russia, and they were the ones also saying that we would like to be the hosts of this mediation efforts. Then, of course, Qatar, if you maybe the viewers would remember, they were the ones who were saying that we are going to negotiate this, and West said okay. So this is, but the fact that this shift has actually turned back to Turkey, and as you say, there has been a more international attention to Turkey's role as a mediator to be able to get, Putin and Ukraine together. That's a I mean, looking at it from an international relations, specialist point of view, it's a great thing. Turkey had hosted the peace talks in Russia between Russia and Ukraine back in 2022, but then there was no, real diplomatic step taken. And now there will be a meeting in Switzerland, which Russia is not going to go, but it's going to be around I think it's basically to get the Ukrainians to to agree to get to to get the agreement, because I mean there's no end to this conflict. I mean Russia is huge. Russia is very strong. I mean Ukraine is a very small country. No matter how much it's how much support it gets, unfortunately this. I mean, despite the fact that this is a complete invasion of sovereignty of Ukraine, looking at it, from a distance, it looks like, it's not a very hopeful situation for the Ukrainians, just because of the sheer size of Russia, or it can, turn into a big frozen conflict for years to come, which is another, huge problem, as Turkey has been living with Cyprus, for example. It was just 60th year of the Cyprus frozen conflict. It's so can you call that a good foreign policy? It's like, yeah. So this is the. So I think only time would tell, but again, I mean, of course, it would be, and Turkey actually has the means and the relations with both sides in order to actually really make this happen. And I think that is actually going back to that is actually coming back to the fore and grabbing the attention of whoever actually really wants to make peace in Ukraine.
Hopefully, well, West is definitely supporting Ukraine. They are very sharp on that decision because of the humanitarian side as well. Because, I mean, when you bombard civilians and civilians have to combat with the conflict, it is another issue to be discussed. So, and also as a journalist, yes, my stance is the same, like maybe West where they stand, but from the humanitarian side. But of course, when you consider about the recent agreement with the UK with Ukraine, was another thing to consider, because they want a peace, but at the same time they are supporting financially Ukraine to build up a stronger defense mechanism in their country. So I don't know how they sincere about it, but we will see. We will follow the situation as well. But hopefully, Turkey is a very important. Turkey has a really important role on that. Hopefully, some peaceful, peace talks will start soon officially. Well, speaking about the peace talks, Pope Francis recently urged Ukraine to raise a white flag as a symbol of peace. How do you see Turkey's involvement in this call, and what role could Turkey play in facilitating peace negotiations? I mean, we talked about it, but I think this is very important. Even Pope Francis now seems like involved in this situation. And some part of me is saying that, I mean, when you see the big picture, it seems like Ukraine has to wing a flag, white flag,
raise the flag, right?
or not. I don't know, but what's your opinion on that?
Yeah. Actually, I was listening to a podcast this morning, and it was a Ukrainian official who was saying that if Pope wants the conflict to end, he said, why don't they talk to Russia, Putin, instead of telling Ukrainians to actually raise the white flag. But as you said, I mean, it's when the Pope talks about it, it's also a signal to the international community that that peace is required, peace is demanded, or that the world is sick of this war. I mean, in 2013 to 2023, there were also reports in the media that Putin actually sent signals to the United States back in 2023, last year, through Moscow's Arab partners in the Middle East, and that it was ready to consider a ceasefire in Ukraine. And I mean, if we look at the West as well, and I mean, this is of course very much in relationship to the other adversaries I was talking about in terms of Turkey's becoming other mediators. I mean, there were a lot of efforts in that, sporadic meetings, but getting together various countries of the what we call the global South right now. But if you and I think like one of the most recent things, and that something that we could actually read a little bit more signal from, was actually Macron's call when he convened a meeting in February 2024, this last month, bringing together 20 European countries to support Ukraine. And this is the Macron who said that NATO is brain dead. And now, like, he's convening the European countries and saying that NATO should do whatever it could to actually stop Russia from spreading further into Europe. I mean, there are these other countries, such as the small countries like Moldova, whom Russia would not have any difficulty in terms of going in. So I think the West is also very much concerned with this fact that Russia can actually expand even more, and make some more advances in terms of for territorial gain. And also, I mean, let's not forget that this is not a war against Ukraine for Russia. This is a war against the West. So it's not it's not only about Ukraine, or gaining these little 4 or 5 enclaves of Ukraine. It's about showing the West that I still have the power. You enlarged NATO, and now we don't know. I mean, thanks to Russia, on the other hand, now NATO has become 32 countries. So it's enlarged and become much more powerful. But this is not a war of. This is not a war, only about Ukraine, and I think that is why, even Pope says that, we should, if we have to give. I mean, once Kissinger said this, we were really angry, and now Pope is saying it. So I don't know. Of course, like speculating about these is actually a fun, but not a very fruitful way of looking at it. So we'll just see.
Yes, I think the NATO membership of Ukraine is definitely out of the table for Russia, because this is obvious. I mean, this is not like welcome to my border, and I'm happy to have you with the other countries like US involved, especially. I think yes. It is not on the table, not at all, and there won't be any compromising on that for sure. Well, we kind of delve into that topic, your subject, but Turkey, considering Turkey's geographical position and its historical ties with both Russia and Ukraine, how do you see Turkey navigating its role in the Ukraine conflict while maintaining diplomatic relations with all parties involved? I think, well, you kind of answered this, but Turkey is kind of having a head role, on that, and this is very important, and people are wondering how this happened.
Well, again, I mean, we touched upon it, but it's, I mean, given the relationships, given the defense industry relationships with Ukraine, given the economic ties with Ukraine and Russia, and given the given the fact that Erdogan was actually the one of the very few leaders who could actually still talk to both Putin and who could also talk with Zelensky, of course, proved beneficial for Turkey's diplomatic effords in terms of getting the two parties together, and the Green Deal, when it was done, of course, it was a good. Its success was actually recognized by the Western world as well. So I think Turkey has still the potential to do so, to do the peace talks, or not the peace talks, but maybe the ceasefire talks. But I think, I mean, for example, for someone like me in 20 years, when the documents come clear, if there are any documents actually, because we used to have documents, but we don't anymore. But it will be interesting to see like how this conflict resolution process actually unfolded. Which countries wanted to do what, and how because today in class we were talking about Dayton agreements and how it didn't work. So it will be interesting to see how these mediation efforts actually, or the desire to get these two parties to the table is going to pan out in the future.
I see, and we're coming to an end now. I have one more question, and I think this is kind of because it was in a short notice that Zelensky decided to visit Turkey and have a meeting with Erdogan, and he expressed gratitude towards Turkey. What specific forms of support or cooperation do you believe Ukraine expect or could receive from Turkey in the near future?
Well, apparently the defense, the defense industry, the defense cooperation is actually going to continue. I mean, Zelensky visited the shipyard near Istanbul to inspect the construction work on the two corvettes for the Ukrainian Navy. So, and he discussed the joint production of some more arms and ammunition with Erdogan. So this defense industry cooperation is apparently going to go on. And it's not going to be only for public companies, but it's also going to be for private companies as well. So this is, I mean, unfortunately, war is good business. So that's one thing. And then we know, I mean, we've seen in the reports that in January, Turkey and Ukraine actually signed an accord that will allow Turkish construction firms to take part in the reconstruction of the Ukrainian infrastructure once the war is done. So, that's another area that is going to happen. But that's what happens after all wars. I mean, that's the unfortunately, again, as a person who studies peace and how to improve peace, unfortunately, war is an industry. So that is, I think those are the main those are the linkages that we should look at. Those are the news that we should follow. Like the defense cooperation, and the construction businesses that is going to go on, especially in terms of our relations with Ukraine. So.
Thank you so much. Is there anything you would like to add before we come to closure?
Well, one of the things that I would love to bring about, and this is this is something that I've been doing for such a long time. So those who know me know that how passionate I feel about this, and that is to include women in these peace talks, and to include women in these negotiations, because Turkish Foreign Ministry has amazing women who are who are great negotiators, if Turkey is actually going to go into conflict resolution efforts, or peace negotiations, ceasefire agreements, it would be wonderful if we have some of those wonderful women in the foreign ministry who would be actually directly involved with these peace talks. So.
Well, yeah, this is a clear message when speaking about women, and definitely we would like to see more women ministers everywhere, so in the diplomacy especially, and your precious work is just so important for that, and thank you very much for that as well, and thank you for joining today's discussion. I'm sure there will be more to come, but this is just the beginning for us. Hopefully, soon we will have more topics to talk with you, Professor Dr. Zeynep Alemdar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you. Well, yes, we spoke about the recent visit of Zelensky today, and whether there's a potential peace talk. Taking important role on that. We will see on coming days. We will definitely meet on Thursday for another discussion. Till then, have a lovely evening and take care. Bye-bye.